These days, everyone has an opinion, but one thing we can all agree on is that manure is pretty smelly. People often look at it as an environmental liability, but if manure is applied at rates equal to or less than the nitrogen requirement of a crop, it can produce more environmental benefits than commercial fertilizer. We sat down with Nebraska Extension Livestock Environmental Engineer Dr. Rick Koelsch to learn more.
For centuries, farmers have used manure to enrich their soil and help their plants grow. Sure, it's full of nutrients, but it also contains things you can't get from man-made fertilizers.
Manure has carbon in it, unlike our commercial fertilizers, and that's really where manure, if it's used properly, selected for the right locations, it has an additional value far beyond commercial fertilizers. And so that's where we get both some environmental benefits and some economic benefits that we wouldn't have expected often.
Last year, a team of researchers in China conducted 140 distinctive trials to learn how manure can produce more environmental benefits when compared to commercial fertilizer. The tests used grain-related crops and looked at manure substituted with fertilizer from Asia, Europe, and the U.S.
They found that in situations where we apply manure at a rate that is less than nitrogen requirement of the crop, that is more than double that, above 10%. And so that was suggesting to us that there's probably a connection, a complementary connection between fertilizer and manure.
The study yielded some interesting environmental results too, as it relates to nitrogen and carbon.
Manure trials had lower nitrogen loss to surface and groundwater, which in Nebraska is very important. It also had less ammonia losses into the air. The last thing that this study pointed out to us was the change in the carbon in the soil. We know that manure adds carbon to the soil, and a lot of that carbon is really showing up as an increase in the microbial biomass. And the energy that manure brings is the food source for those microbes, and it just really causes an explosion of their population and their activity. And that explosion in microbial activity really leads to a lot of the soil changes and the benefits that we see environmentally.
As with many things, moderation is key. Applying too much manure can reverse its beneficial purposes.
So that means that if we're going to put manure on, we need to estimate the nitrogen availability to the crop and then reduce the fertilizer by that same amount. So meeting the nitrogen requirement and not exceeding it. In fact, the study suggested that even stepping back maybe 50 to 75% of the nitrogen requirement would be the best place to apply.
Dr. Koelsch says that when manure is applied at near a nitrogen rate, then it's likely we're adding in too much phosphorus, potassium, and other micronutrients. That can cause problems.
So in particular, phosphorus is a water quality concern. So if we do not return to that same field with manure until the phosphorus levels have come back down to below what the crop needs, then we will not have an environmental concern from a phosphorus perspective.
You can learn more about this research online. Just head over to cropwatch.unl.edu and type manure into the search box.